Member state of the Arab League. The 2019 to 2022 Sudanese transition to democracy is an ongoing democratic transition in Sudan that began in July 2019. Omar al-Bashir overthrew the democratically elected government of Sadiq al-Mahdi in 1989 and was himself overthrown in the April 2019 Sudanese coup d'etat, in which he was replaced by the Transitional Military Council after several months of sustained street protests. Following further protests and the 3rd of June Khartoum massacre, the TMC and the Forces of Freedom and Change Alliance agreed on the 5th of July 2019 to a 39-month transition process to return to democracy, including the creation of executive, legislative and judicial institutions and procedures. On the 17th of July, the TMC and FFC signed a written form of the agreement. The Darfur Displaced General Coordination opposed the 5th of July verbal deal and the Sudan Revolutionary Front, the National Consensus Forces and the Sudanese Journalists Network opposed the 17th of July written deal. On the 4th of August 2019, the draft constitutional declaration was initially signed by Ahmed Rabi for the FFC and Baithe, deputy head of the TMC, Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, in the presence of Ethiopian and African Union mediators, and it was signed more formally by Rabi and Hemeti on the 17th of August in the presence of international heads of state and government. Sudan's 1948 election took place while Sudan was still under Anglo-Egyptian rule, with the question of union or separation from Egypt being a major electoral issue. After independence in 1956, the following half-century included a mix of national elections, constitutions, coalition governments, coups d'etat, involvement in the Chadian civil war. Omar al-Bashir's rule started with the 1989 Sudanese coup d'etat and ended with the April 2019 Sudanese coup d'etat during the Sudanese Revolution. On the 5th of July, with the help of African Union mediator Mohammed El Hassan Lebet and Ethiopian mediator Mahmoud Dria, a verbal deal was reached by the TMC and the Forces of Freedom and Change Alliance, including Siddiq Yossef and Ibrahim al-Amin, on the formation of governmental institutions, under which the presidency of the transitional government would rotate between the military and civilians. The initial verbal deal agreed to by the TMC and the civilian negotiators included the creation of a Sovereignty Council, a 39-month transition period leading to elections, a cabinet of ministers, a legislative council, and an investigation into the Khartoum massacre. Tahani Abbas, a co-founder of No to Women's Oppression, stated her worry that women might be excluded from the transition institutions, arguing that women, the brunt of the violence, sexual harassment and rape, and were active in organizing the protests. The Minawi and Al-Nur factions of the Sudan Liberation Movement, Army, a Darfur armed rebel group, both stated on the 5th of July that they rejected the deal, arguing that the deal would not achieve an equal citizenship state. The Rapid Support Forces attacked people celebrating the deal in Abu Jubair by beating them, firing tear gas, and shooting live bullets into the air. One person was hospitalized for serious wounds. Following the 5th of July verbal agreement, drafting of a written agreement by a committee of lawyers, including African Union lawyers, was promised to take place within 48 hours. On the 9th of July, the 4-person drafting committee, including Yahya al-Hussein, stated that the text had not yet been finished. The new time schedule was for the agreement to be signed within 10 days in a ceremony including regional leaders. On the 13th of July, 3 sticking points delaying the signing of the agreement included the FFC requiring the Human Rights Investigation Committee to exclude people suspected of responsibility or implementation of the 3rd of June Khartoum massacre, the FFC requiring a limit on the time frame for appointing the Legislative Council, and disagreement between the FFC and the TMC regarding TMC, endorse or of the nominees. A written form of the deal as a political agreement, with a constitutional declaration to follow later, was signed by the TMC and FFC on the 17th of July. The Darfur Displaced General Coordination, representing people from Darfur displaced in relation to the Darfur genocide, objected to the 5th of July verbal agreement, describing it as flawed in form and content, and a desperate attempt to sustain the rule of the National Congress Party, the dominant political party of Omar al-Bashir's 30-year rule of Sudan. In the days following the 17th of July written deal, rebel groups represented by the Sudan Revolutionary Front, the National Consensus Forces, a coalition of political parties that opposed al-Bashir's National Congress, and the Sudanese Journalists Network objected to the signed written agreement. The NCF and the SRF said that the FFC had signed the deal in Khartoum without waiting for the NCF and other opposition forces, who had still been discussing the proposed deal in Addis Ababa. The NCF state